just finished The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and going in, I didn't know anything about the plot except that it was about a grande dame of Hollywood who had married 7 husbands over the course of her lifetime. And there were so many things about this book that surprised me, from POC representation to LGBTQ plus representation, all of which made me love the story even more. And I was already fully invested from the beginning because it's a story about old Hollywood, and I'm a huge classic film fan, and it really felt tailor-made for my interest. Our protagonist, Evelyn, is a Hollywood icon whose career spans decades, and because of this, there are a lot of little nods and homages to the golden age of Hollywood sprinkled throughout the book. It was kind of like a classic film Easter egg hunt, where I kept picking up on little things that reminded me of people that actually existed or things that actually did happen in the industry, and it made reading the book really fun as a classic film lover. There are a lot of movies about this era of Hollywood, but not a lot of novels, at least ones that do it well, so I really loved it, and as the true book nerd and cinephile that I am, I thought it would be fun to compile a few of my favorite odes to old Hollywood from the book. Evelyn Hugo is kind of a Frankenstein of many classic film actresses, although as a character she's unique and she stands on her own, but it is kind of fun to look closely at all the little threads and how they're interwoven and the way that she pays homage to real women that actually left their mark on the industry. So here are 7-ish real-life women behind the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Prima donna girl, yeah. All I ever wanted was the world. I can't help that I need it all. Prima donna lights, the rise and fall.
The first and most obvious reference is right there in the title. Even if you don't have any knowledge of film history, if you hear old Hollywood actress that married a bunch of dudes, your mind probably jumps straight to Elizabeth Taylor. The structure of Evelyn's life and the book itself makes obvious parallels to Liz in how each of her marriages can be used to mark the different eras of her life, as well as the public's tendency to define her by her relationships with the men in her life rather than her career and her own accomplishments. Not to mention all the things that go on behind the scenes that the magazines aren't privy to. Evelyn's relationship with studio producer Harry Cameron also pulls from Liz's real-life friendship with Montgomery Clift for reasons that I don't want to spoil just yet. The book's premise of Evelyn divulging her life story and secrets in a tell-all session with a journalist lifts directly from Ava Gardner's life. In her later years, Gardner sat down with a reporter she hired to ghostwrite her autobiography in a similar fashion where she confessed to secrets about her life and marriages on tape, just like Evelyn. Gardner ended up pulling the book, but it was eventually published after her and the ghostwriter's death as Ava Gardner, The Secret Confessions, which author Taylor Jenkins Reid cites as a direct influence on the concept for The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Actors being forced to change their names and fabricate tabloid-friendly backstories was a common practice for studio players of old. Evelyn is just a representation of one of many actors and actresses that were issued studio-mandated identity makeovers, among the likes of Kim Novak, Joan Crawford, and Carole Lombard. Hollywood has poked fun at this long-standing tradition many times over the years, but can memorably be seen satirized in the 2 earlier versions of A Star is Born.
Very truly.
Do you know what her name is? Esther Victoria Blodgett.
Hey, we'll have to do something about that right away.
Evelyn is also notably a woman of color. She is of Cuban descent, and she takes her first husband's last name, Diaz, and is encouraged by film producer best friend Harry Cameron to change it. While many stars were assigned name changes to sound less plain and more intriguing or exotic, it was also a convenient tactic to erase non-white cultural ties, i.e. Rita Hayworth, who was born Margarita Carmen Cancino. Old Hollywood actresses of color that embraced their non-white heritage were often stuck in one-dimensional side roles, and oftentimes if they wanted to break out into leading lady roles, they were encouraged to whitewash themselves. Rita Hayworth's famous red curls were also an artifice to mask her Spanish ancestry and make her appear more white, much like Evelyn's dyed platinum blonde locks, which eventually became a signature of her image, harkening back to another old Hollywood starlet, the original blonde bombshell, Jean Harlow. Jean Harlow was a fellow bottle blonde who underwent extensive hair maintenance to dye her ash blonde hair into the famous platinum blonde locks that she became known for. Harlow began her career in roles emphasizing her sexiness, so much that MGM almost didn't sign her, saying that their leading ladies were elegant and Harlow only played floozies. In the book, Evelyn is often referred to in the tabloids as a sex pot, as was Harlow in her time, as well as the other famous blonde bombshell. Jean Harlow was even Marilyn Monroe's idol. She modeled parts of her look and personality off of her and almost played her in a biopic that never happened. Like Marilyn, Evelyn used her sex appeal to advance her career, often vamping up her attractiveness on screen, while simultaneously in search of roles with more depth that allowed her to prove her talents as a serious actress. If you haven't finished the book yet, we are about to go into major spoiler territory, so this is your warning. Evelyn's marriage to her second husband, Don Adler, began as a PR relationship set up by the studio. It is still freakishly common for stars to fabricate relationships and be seen around town attracting paparazzi attention in order to generate buzz for their latest project. This is an age-old marketing tradition born in the studio system. But it is a truth universally acknowledged that the masses love seeing their favorite celebs making out. Don Adler and Evelyn Hugo's relationship started out as a PR stunt, but they ended up lucky in love for at least a short while. A real-life example of this is Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, who were paired together by the studios to promote the 9 films they made together. Tracy and Hepburn's relationship was very long and complicated, but whatever you believe, it was initially staged by the studios. After her marriage to Don Adler, Evelyn is blackballed by the studio, prohibited from getting any viable jobs, blocked from being nominated from an Oscar that she should have got, and her career effectively ended at that point. I couldn't find any legitimate instances of studios prioritizing one divorced star's contract and then dropping the other, but that's not to say that it never happened. The most famous blacklist in Hollywood happened during the Red Scare, which isn't present in the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo at all, but the second would be a magazine article called Dead Cats by journalist Harry Brandt, where he deems several Hollywood stars as box office poison for holding on to expensive studio contracts while churning out low numbers at the box office. The article did have its repercussions, but many of the stars were able to move past it and go on to have thriving careers. Among the stars listed were Joan Crawford and Katharine Hepburn, who have a thing or two in common with Evelyn, or at least were rumored to. The biggest driving plot point in the book is Evelyn's secret lifelong love affair with fellow actress Celia St. James. This was something I didn't see coming at all when reading the book, and I wasn't expecting POC representation or LGBTQ+ representation, let alone at the forefront of the story, which was such a refreshing and pleasant surprise. Speculation about actors' sexualities is as old as the movies themselves, and when it comes to old Hollywood actors that have come and gone, we will just never have conclusive evidence. It'll always be speculation. But if you're interested in some real-life Hollywood lesbians, I recommend doing a little bit of reading on The Sewing Circle. One of the most famous actresses whose career was constantly circled by rumors of homosexuality is Katharine Hepburn, who I previously mentioned. Hepburn also played Jo in Little Women, just like Evelyn, which may be a little nod to her, or it could just be a complete coincidence. But most of Evelyn's films and the other films mentioned in the book are completely fictionalized, but Little Women is the only one that actually was made into a film around the same era in the book. Earlier I mentioned that Evelyn's relationship with her best friend Harry Cameron mirrors the real-life relationship of Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift. Taylor and Clift were never married, but they considered each other best friends and often called each other the loves of their lives, much like Evelyn and Harry do in the book. Montgomery Clift was never publicly out, but he's widely considered to be bisexual and carried out known relationships with men throughout his life. Clift was in a tragic car accident leaving Taylor's home one night, and Taylor was the one who found him in the wreckage. This is almost exactly how Harry's death plays out in the book, except Harry dies shortly after at the hospital, and Clift survived the crash, although he never fully recovered. And Clift didn't have a secret lover in the passenger seat of his car at the time of the wreck. I've been looking for a short-lived publicity marriage like Evelyn's to Mick Riva, but I don't think there's a real-life actress that did anything remotely similar to a single-day Vegas stint marriage to a rock star in order to divert media attention from her lesbian relationship. There's Zsa Zsa Gabor, who actually outpaces Evelyn at a whopping 9 husbands, famously had a single-day marriage to Philippe de Alba, but it was under completely different circumstances. But many actors did partake in lavender marriages, which were convenient cover-ups often encouraged by the studio in order to hide one of the partner's sexualities. Evelyn's marriage to Mick Riva wasn't that at all, and if anything, it's more similar to her agreement marriage to Rex North and then later to her marriage with Harry Cameron, in which case it was mutually lavender. Rudolph Valentino, Rock Hudson, and Barbara Stanwyck, who was reportedly bisexual just like Evelyn, all were rumored to have been part of lavender marriages at some point in their careers. One of my favorite moments of Evelyn's career was her foray into French New Wave cinema, especially seeing her start out as an MGM darling and then go on to being an established actress and then fumbling for a career comeback and landing in the world of the French New Wave. Evelyn's controversial turn in the movie 3 AM reminded me of French New Wave staples like Jean Seberg and Anna Karina, but both of them found their footing in French New Wave relatively early on in their careers, while Hugo was looking for a comeback, which reminded me more of Jane Fonda. Fonda starred in one French film, Tout va bien, while she was fixing for a comeback in her career. And while Tout va bien wasn't quite that yet for Fonda, it was still a departure from her earlier work and a nice little experimental detour, same as it was for Evelyn. And Evelyn would go on to win an Oscar, finally, for her next picture. 3 AM director and Evelyn's 6th husband, Max Girard, is almost definitely a nod to Jean-Luc Godard, who directed Tout va bien, and whose work in the French New Wave cinema is considered groundbreaking. Godard also married 2 of his leading ladies, with whom he produced some of his best films. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is filled with tons of classic film references. These are just a few of the ones that I wanted to talk about, and I probably missed a lot of them, which makes me excited to reread the book someday and see what other little old Hollywood gems are buried in there. If I missed one that you noticed and really liked, let me know down in the comments and we could talk about it, and just let me know your general thoughts about the book because I really liked it. I really want to see it as a movie someday. The way it was structured and written really easily played out like a film in my head. The scenes felt like scenes from a film, and I need to see Evelyn's story told on film the way it should be. I love books and I love classic films, so anytime the two intertwine, I'm already hooked. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!
But it's always someone else's fault. Got you right.